Well, here we are. We're getting into the news review. We'll be digging into the papers shortly. But a few thoughts are running through my mind, especially if you followed the discourse overnight when it comes to the arrest of Bobie Ansa, a media person. It's just raising some thoughts, right, about what exactly is prevailing in our country. There have been instances where people cite where under the Rawlings regime, for example, may his soul rest in peace, there were current journalists, I just don't want to mention names, who may have rubbed him raw, and the right processes in court were followed. So what is happening? There's the Power FM journalist, and recently this one from Accra 100.5 FM, Bobie Ansa, the host of the Citizen Show. Of course, we know the reasons, and even outside of journalists, we've seen Mensa Thompson of ASEPA get apprehended recently. What exactly is it? I mean, we'd love to hear from you with the hashtag AM Show. What do you feel is happening? Is this an unfair clamping down? Or is it that, I mean, the bit about responsible journalism, let's not forget that. I cannot just come on air and say whatever I feel like saying. That's not how it works. But even if someone errs, there are processes to follow in a court of law. If you feel you've been defamed, there are processes to follow in a court of law. There are civil processes to follow. And even if at some point whatever the person has done borders on criminality, there are processes to follow in a court of law, like former President Rawlings did. So what is happening in this instance? Someone says, and he's not a journalist, Mensa Thompson says, the president's children used a private jet to go to the UK for shopping. Not true. Take it up in court. When the person is arrested by the police and all of that. And we know sometimes some of the things that happen. I doff my hat to Dr. George Ekufu-Dampare, but of course, we've had long-standing issues with the Ghana Police Service. Do these things place you in a positive light or a negative light? And the accusation is there where some people feel that maybe the powers of the state, our boys, our men and women in blue, are being used to persecute certain people. Is that what is happening? Is it not? And can we stem the tide of these and just follow the proper processes in court so that we don't create this impression of any muzzling or anything of the sort? Some thoughts running through my mind this morning on the back of these recent happenings. Of course, we stand for independent, fearless, and credible journalism. Journalism with responsibility. But when we as journalists do what we do, and if you put something on social media, the next thing you're getting hauled into a jail cell or a police cell, questions, lots of questions to be asked. Let me get into the papers now as we dig into some of the other topical issues that are making the rounds. But maybe before that, it nearly skipped my mind. There's something else also, and I just want to put it to you, the people of Ghana, for a reflection. I'm sure you saw the post by Gabi Ochre-Dako concerning Mahama and what he had said about COVID-19 and the economy, and suggesting that stammerers, can be likened to, and with all apologies from my end, that is what he did, could be likened to the former president, and the current president could be likened to a very fast rapper, one who is dexterous with, the spoken word, who has the gift of the gab, in a proper sense, the president. And there's a press statement purportedly from, this group that is denigrating this, and it calls this disparaging comments made by Gabi Ochre-Dako. He, in putting up this post, to be fair, he did say apologies to stammerers, but it appears the group has not taken this lightly at all, and they are unimpressed by these actions. That is the Ghana Stammering Association. So if we're talking about what people are putting on social media, I guess we should look at it from all angles then. The Daily Graphic newspaper this morning, resolving development challenges in West Africa, coups can't be justified. That's according to President Akufo-Addo. Coups can't be justified. Now the story reads, President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has told the international community that no reason whatsoever is good enough to justify the overthrow of any democratically elected government in West Africa. And he says, he argued that lessons from various coups d'etats in the sub-region over the years, quote, have taught us that these military interventions are never a panacea for addressing whatever challenges a nation may be confronted with. President Akufo-Addo said this at the presentation of his New Year greetings to the diplomatic corps at the Pediase Lodge in Ebri, in the eastern region, last Wednesday night. And here too, so many things to discourse on. I've never been a fan of coups d'etats, and I never will be, I suppose. But, I mean, right from the very first one that ousted Osajefo, we've had a string of them in the 70s, 80s, and here we are in the 21st century with the sub-region mired in putches, coups d'etats once more. My only call, if you look at these countries that fall to this plague, this menace, you would notice a certain trends that have been pointed to by the likes of Colonel Festus Abwaje, retired, by the likes of Professor Enning, by so many others, about these tendencies that can fuel these actions. Hopefully, we never go that way. We have a checkered history when it comes to coups d'etats in our own country, in the 70s and 80s especially. But looking at the sub-region, there are so many issues that our leadership should be looking at. And thankfully, at least one of those crucial issues has been addressed by our current president, who says he will not go for another term. I mean, he's made it very clear. And hopefully we'll not have that, because it's been on the back of that in some cases we've seen coups also take place. More stories in the Daily Graphic newspaper. Government has no intention to seek IMF bailout. That's according to Ken Oforiatta, finance minister. It's on page 16. Is it the stance, though, of this administration that will never go the way of the IMF again? Is that practical? Is that, I mean, looking at the circumstances when it comes to COVID-19 and what supposedly it has done to economies across the world. Yesterday, listening to the international news, I heard talk about the United States and I think its highest inflation rates also in about 40 years, 4 decades. But that is not even hinged on COVID-19. It had to do with food prices, the cost of accommodation, the cost of utilities like electricity, nothing to do with COVID-19. Of course, they have also faced the shocks of COVID-19. But in our peculiar case, the picture is painted that COVID has done us in. So if we're still mired in this, will the e-levy be the be-all and end-all, the panacea to our economic woes? We've been told that it will not, but what is the reality? Anyway, so that is the story. It's on page 16. There's also Yentia demo against e-levy, and protesters calling themselves the Coalition of Concerned Ghanaians poured onto the streets of Accra yesterday to express their opposition to the electronic transaction levy, which is before Parliament for consideration. Dubbed Yentia, a key word meaning we won't pay, the demonstration, which was led by the youth wing of the National Democratic Congress, also saw groups such as Justice for Ghana Advocacy Group, Alliance for Social Equity and Public Accountability, that is ASEPA, Coalition of Nation Builders Corps trainees. Some of them feel aggrieved because they've still not received some of their payments, and some of them want to continue elsewhere. Headquarters and Okada riders participating. If you didn't follow it, well, you can still grab snippets of that on our social media portals. Facebook, you can check us out. President on 5 Nation tour. All of that in the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let me get to the back page now. Pay $5 million from Maxim into Apiate Support Fund. President directs. Now, we heard from the Sector Minister, Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Honorable Jinapo. And now there is that directive from Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the President, that the $5 million out of the $6 million to be paid by Maxim Ghana Limited should be donated to the Apiate Support Fund. The government established the fund to, among other things, support victims of the Apiate explosion and facilitate the reconstruction of the community. And COVID-19 fund supports deaf persons to access healthcare. All of those stories in the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's quickly do the Ghanaian Times newspaper now, as we check out what details they have for us. Anti-e-levy demo hits Accra streets. Story on page 17, like I started mentioning, and they have indicated the leadership, those organizing these demonstrations, they have intimated that they're going to replicate this across the 16 regions of the country. So starting in Accra, and it will be in other regions as well. President departs for 10-day five-nation working visit. Big boost for salt mining in Adan. That story on page 23. As Electrochem rolls out community pan construction for artisanal miners. I'll get into that story because, of course, in recent times we've been hearing from members of the community around the Songo area who have also been plaintive about the activities of Electrochem. And some have even intimated that Electrochem is going outside of its concessions. Let's get some details from page 23 of the paper. Now, the Electrochem Ghana Limited has scaled up the construction of community pans for salt winning by artisanal miners in communities bordering the company's concession in the Adan West District. A total of 10 community pans that have already been built for Nako Mokope within the Agbakpe community were being filled with mature brine, that is salt water, which will crystallize into top quality salt for the locals to mine. And of course, that also resonates with what an official, public relations official of Electrochem had been sharing with us, that they have not, what's the proper word? They have not trespassed into the land space or the areas allotted to the people to mine. Interesting developments that we shall be getting into. E-levy to support country's development agenda. That's according to the finance minister. That story is on page 15. And we all agree we're in consonance. No country develops without taxes and levies. Across the world, it is same. But do we see same? Do we get value for our money in terms of the taxes we pay, the levies we cough up, especially when we're all tightening our belts? Maybe the politicians not so much so, but for ordinary Ghanaians tightening their belts as we pay these taxes. What are the guarantees? And as some people have posed the questions, in the past we've paid numerous taxes, and what has been there really to show for it? So will this be the game changer if we had to pay close to 7 billion Ghana cedis more? In the international bit, 2 Cameroonians remanded for allegedly possessing counterfeits worth 64,000 Ghana cedis, and military intercepts 192 fake electricity meters at Aflao. This is becoming a major problem, and of course you can imagine almost 200 of them. We complain about fires here and there. Of course, when we are using gadgets that are not approved, at least even electricity meters, it is only a call for trouble. And then Libyan PM, the Prime Minister, survives apparent assassination bid. I'm speaking of Abdul Hamid al-Dabiba, who yesterday, that story was on the BBC and a lot of talk about it. He narrowly escaped death as his vehicle was riddled with bullets. And of course, on the floor of Parliament, he was also being replaced at the same time. Now, this one, interesting for me as a broadcaster, page 7 of the paper, punish fully policemen who assaulted journalist. And the GJA, well, doing what it does best, bringing out this release. The Ghana Journalists Association calling on the police administration to fully punish the policeman who brutally assaulted Eric Nana Jetua, a journalist at Connect FM in Takoradi. If you saw the photos, beaten, his lip, opened up and all of that, his face puffy, his shirt ripped and all of that. These are some of the instances we're talking about. These things happening to media people. Is it just out of the blue, a flash in the pan? Or is it something we really ought to be worried about as a people? Now, a statement signed and issued in Accra yesterday by President of the GJA, Afil Moni, said the association also expected a speedy conclusion of the investigation into the incident, which was another brazen act of impunity. It said the actions of the policemen have left the victim with hearing difficulties in the right ear, which also experienced occasional discharge. Sad, pathetic, really. I wouldn't want it to happen to me, and so I wouldn't be happy about it's happening to someone else. On the back page of the paper, Upper West Region leads in FGM prevalence, female genital mutilation. In the next few minutes, we'll be wrapping with the papers. Daily Guide newspaper. PAC chases NDC guru over $60,000 deal. And so former Ghana ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Alhaji Said Sinari, said the head of Chancery, Martin Edu-Ago, and the head of Chancery have been cited for allegedly paying an amount of 60,000 American dollars to Glencoe Construction and Engineering Limited for no work done. The payment was meant for consultancy services in respect of the construction of a residence at Ghana's mission in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The Auditor General, in its 2017 report to Parliament, captured it as a fictitious payment, pointing our further checks revealed that although there was no evidence of work done, the mission paid the amount to the company. All of that there. And in other stories, let me go to the entertainment page of the paper. That is the Daily Guide newspaper now. And, so Oxlade has been in the news for not very good reasons. There was a sex tape that supposedly was put out. And the lady in question, the photo, has been splashed in the middle spread of the Daily Guide newspaper. Strongman drops Onipa featuring Apia. That is another banger that is out there. Strongman, of course, one of the brighter spots when it comes to hip life or hip-hop in Ghana currently. Senegal team gifted with land, cash for AFCON triumph. We've been reading more about that. And GFA named strong coaching squad for Nigeria playoff. Otoado head coach Chris Houghton, technical advisor, of course, in addition, George Watting and Masood Didi Dramani. That's it for the Daily Guide newspaper. The Republic Press. Government to revamp Valco to support integrated aluminium industry. That's according to the Lands Minister. Republic Press newspaper now. Akufo-Addo on that working visit, and former President Kufuor extols Otumfuo's contribution to Ghana's exit from HIPIC. NDC threatens judges again. Xavier Sosu leads the charge. And this is what was said. So the Member of Parliament for Medina, Francis Xavier Sosu, has warned judges against engaging in politics as the NDC will, quote, deal with political judges politically when it wins power. And it says, the quote is, if you are a judge, your fidelity is to the Constitution of Ghana and the laws of Ghana. If you allow yourself to be used as a political judge so that you can do the bidding of the ruling government, be warned, because we are watching closely. And in the event that there's change of power, every political judge will be fished out, every political judge will be dealt with politically. But such statements, though, coming from a lawyer. And, of course, how do you determine who is being political and who is not being political? Especially with the history we have of some judges losing their lives being snuffed out. I don't know how appropriate it is for the lawmaker to have made such comments in the public domain. But of course, yes, judges would have to exercise their discretion and the law, so to speak, in delivering their judgments. But it does not make them apolitical in its proper sense. They just have to dispense justice without being political or leaning this way or that. But I get the reasoning of Francis Xavier Sosu. It's just that it is unpalatable, these words that he uses. And the man himself is in some trouble already. Maybe piling trouble upon trouble. NPP MP calls out Adwoa Safo, accuses her of sabotage. And of course, there have been those calls, those suggestions that Adwoa Safo wants to be made deputy majority leader, and she's holding the party to ransom. NDC will abolish e-levy if passed. That's according to Asiedu in Ketsia. I just have one question for the General Secretary of the NDC. Should that happen, and should the NDC come to power, I hope it's not going to be like in previous regimes, because things have been said, criticized loudly, and then a regime comes to power and continues. It's Yankonkwa, you know? I mean, VAT is a typical example. The way it was poo-pooed by the MPP, and then when it came to power in 2000, the way it was embraced, quite surprising, right? The BNFT, I'll be wrapping shortly. Inflation trend signals long-haul battle against high cost of living. Let's engage more to address PFJ, that is planting for food and job challenges. That's according to fertilizer manufacturers. And turf war at sea. as canoe fishers fight industrial trawlers over territorial intrusions. This matter is a big issue. Trawler fishing in our waters, and even those coming from foreign entities, fishing in our waters, and because we are not able to patrol our waters properly, this has gone on for decades, and still here we are. Only God knows how much we lose annually to these illicit fishers who hit our waters and sometimes even bully our fisher folk. Interesting developments there. I'll skip the Custodian newspaper. I'll skip it. It bears the same stories that we have. But there's a story maybe I should look at. Baumia shames critics of Ghana card as e-passport. Now that has been declared. We've been given the ICAO example and all of that. But it's interesting, isn't it? The Foreign Affairs Minister, Shirley Ayoko Botwe, claimed ignorance or lack of knowledge when it comes to the Ghana card being an e-passport. And that I found to be quite an interesting development. The Daily Statesman, Amayawa Kumfi urges unity in Ashanti MPP. Government committed to 20% expenditure cut. That's on page 2. Until we see the facts and the figures, the details and which areas we're going to be cutting, Mr. Finance Minister, this still remains just talk, mere rhetoric. I'll end with a Finder newspaper. There is court directs UTAG NLC to return to negotiations. Reviving Valco is critical to integrated aluminium industry. And then road crashes, deaths dropped by 4.92%. 4 other indicators also yield positive results. But it's not that positive. 4%, yes. We're making some gains, but the picture is a reflection of what we had last year, in that gory year of so many accidents. 232 people dead already in just the month of January. And if that doesn't startle us, I don't know what will. Well, that is how we wrap the news review this morning. This morning, it's been me, myself, and I, if you like. I've been here, the Lone Ranger, but it's been interesting. Coming up next, we have sports for you. After that, it's the big stories as we talk about the UTAG, government, NLC, triad and its impasse, and we also get into other matters of concern, road crashes, and what some of the agencies, the DVLA, for example, is doing about them. Stay with us. We'll be back.